Thank you. Hello and welcome. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to do some live coding to add multiple forms of two-factor authentication to a Node.js existing web application. We'll show you that no special security, communications, or mobile development skills are required to add 2FA to your project with just a few lines of code. The Authy REST API takes care of the important details like key management, secure data structuring, intelligent SMS routing, mobile client components including push notifications, and multi-device support, including user self-service around phone number change and device change. Authy has three main styles of two-factor authentication, as you see up on the screen, and they all work together to deliver a comprehensive two-factor solution. One Touch is our newest, easiest, and most secure option, allowing a user to prove their second factor just by pressing an approve button on their phone or on their device. As championed by Gartner, this style of solution is exactly what you should start with. Next up is Soft Token. This is our standards-based one-time password solution and our only solution that works offline. Soft Token is similar to Google Authenticator's solution, but with a significantly better user experience and much lower support costs, which will translate to better user acceptance. And finally, SMS and voice. This will allow your app to seamlessly fall back to a broader solution that works with a variety of devices. Let's actually go take a look at the REST building blocks for the Authy solution. We've created a few shell scripts that run our curl commands. You'll get to see the curl command along with the result as we run each one of them. The very first thing you need to do with Authy is register the user with our service and your application. To register a user, you're going to send in the user's email address, cell phone, and country code, and you're going to get back what we call an Authy ID, a unique identifier. This number is what you're going to use when you call us for any two-factor authentication event from this point forward. This is a one-time action. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to send a push notification to the phone on the right here. We send that Authy ID in along with some additional transaction information. This transaction information, go ahead and press, includes anything that you want to do to help the user make an informed decision about whether or not they should approve that transaction. So the information we sent in the REST call on the left is actually showing up on the right on our phone. It says here I'm transferring US dollars. Now, normally when I press the approve button, it would generate a call back to your website that you can then handle and process accordingly. We're going to look at the approval status through a polling process instead. But one thing to note, when I do press approve, the way this is secure is that we actually have an RSA key pair on each and every device that the user might have this set up on, and we're digitally signing that transaction to prove that the approval came from the device that you previously trusted. So let's go ahead and take a look at one thing that we got back from the transaction is a unique transaction ID. We're now sending that in to a status request, and you can see that the status is currently pending because I haven't approved it. When I go ahead and press approve, and now that it's been processed, we can run that command again, and you can see that now the status is approved. So you can find out if it was approved, denied, expired, or if they just haven't acted on it yet. All right, so that's One Touch in a nutshell. Let's go take a look at our standards-based token solution, our soft token solution. Now, it's important to note that we have worked our solutions together so that they really interact with each other and we can take advantage of the right solution for the right time. One example of this is that we're sending in a command that will either send an SMS or a push notification to the user, depending on if they've ever downloaded and activated the Authy application on their smartphone. If they don't have a smartphone, they're going to get an SMS. If they do have a smartphone, they're going to get a push notification that will let them automatically launch their application and find the right token. Since we have the application, when we run this command against our Authy ID, it's going to send us a push notification. And we get a push notification on the phone, and it brings it up straight to the specific token that we need to process. Next thing we need to do with a soft token approach is actually verify that token. So we're running an API call against our verify function. We send in the Authy Authy ID along with the token that the user is providing. This is usually what's going to be entered in onto your website to validate that they do indeed have the symmetric key on their device and it's delivering the correct token. So you can see that it was valid here. Now let's show the SMS as the last function. This time we're running the same command that we did to send that push notification to the user, but this time we're forcing the SMS to go through to ensure that the user actually gets an SMS this time. So we'll do that. We'll see that we get an SMS call on the phone, and we'll just go ahead and click on that, and it's 5744660. And we can see that it's valid. Kaveh, let's run that one more time. This is a one-time password, so the second time we can see that, hey, this token was recently used and we got a 401 instead of a 200 status. Let's actually run it one time with a bad token just to show that there's a different message for that. Great, so this is the fundamental building blocks that our application is going to be using inside our Node.js application. Let's go take a look at the Node.js application at this point. So we're going to show it before we make any modifications. We're going to log in, username and password, and as you might expect when we log in, there's no additional challenge. Let's go do a money transfer. And when we press send, it just goes right on through, no additional challenges on that. And we're going to put some challenges in there through the rest of the session here. First thing we want to do is, let's go back to the website there. The first thing we want to do is understand where we want to put these challenges. Most organizations use an opt-in model, and that means that users are choosing to turn on two-factor authentication, and where we've seen that most effectively placed is where they might change their password up in settings. Let's go into the settings area there. And the first thing you'll see here is we already have the user's email address and phone number because we're a bank and we required it when they registered. If you don't have that information, you'll need to collect it. That's something we're not showing here today. We did want to show you every single line of code we were doing, but we just couldn't squeeze it into 20 minutes, so we've done a little bit of the front-end work, including a placeholder for the two-factor authentication. When we press that change button, what we want to do is bring up an Authy dialog box that allows the user to interact with our two-factor authentication solution. And that's really what we're going to be building today when they first turn on two-factor and whenever they're using it to log on or do a transaction. Okay, let's go take a look at the code. First thing we need to do in the code is extend our user record, in this case in our MongoDB database, to include a placeholder for the Authy ID. The next thing we want to do is, in our case, we're using a library, a Node.js library, to include the Authy core functions to make it a little bit easier to consume. You can work against our REST interface if you want. Let's go take a look at that dialog box next, the Authy HTML that we have up here. This is our dialog box. We've pre-done this a little bit to save some time. And you can see we're going to be prompting the user for additional authentication. Please approve the one-touch request that's going to come through. And then we put a little spinner up there saying, waiting for that one-touch approval, so the user knows that we're waiting on an action for them. Okay, let's go create the register function in the back end. Okay, so we just put some simple user lookup code in there already so that we can get straight to the meat of the code. We're going to register the user. And remember, from the REST call, we send in the email address, the phone number, and the country code. These are the only three pieces of information we need from you to help make this happen. And then once we have that, we're going to get back an Authy ID, as you recall. And that Authy ID, we want to basically set that up against the user record, which is what we're doing here. We're going to get the return value, and we're going to apply it to the Authy ID field that we just added to our MongoDB database. And now we're going to save the user out to the MongoDB database. This is a permanent thing that we want to hold on to, so we definitely want it as part of the user record. Now, that was register. What you normally want to do when you're enabling two-factor authentication, when you're first turning it on, you want to make sure that the user can succeed with their first challenge. So we immediately are going to send a two-factor challenge to the user as part of the turn-on process. And so we're going to send one touch. send approval request, and what we need to do is we need to send in that Authy ID, and we need to send in some information about what it is that the user is approving. What would you like them to see so that they can approve it? And we've set some context on the front end. When the user clicks the enable, it's saying, hey, we're in the two-factor authentication selection. Somebody's turning on two-factor, so that's what's going to appear in there, along with some browser headers and the like, just to give the user all the information you might want to give. You might want to give them geolocation. If it's coming in from China, that's a useful piece of information for the user. And what we're going to get back from this is that unique transaction ID. It's called UUID from us, and we need to find a place to put it. We're just going to put some error control in there, and we're going to store it in this trans ID object. We're going to create a new entry in it that is linked to that unique transaction ID. So here comes the unique transaction ID. And then we want to do one more thing to kind of glue our front end and back end together so that we can make sure that that dialog that we brought up can automatically go away once the user successfully approves it. So we're using the username of the logged in session along with this transaction ID to make that happen. We're using Socket.io to glue the front and back end together. So now we've sent the one-touch. The last thing we need to do is we need to have a function to receive the callback from Authy, and that's where process one touch is going to come back. And in here, we need to take the UUID that we get back in that callback and go find that user ID that we just stored in the previous function where we sent it off. We want to make sure that we got the right user ID, and then we're going to go and update that record to include the status we got back from the one-touch request. Is it approved? Is it denied? So now we've updated the record with an approval or denial, and we're going to emit a one-touch event so that the front end can pick it up and process it and either log the user in or cancel the session. In this case, enable 2FA or cancel the enable function. We have just written almost all of the code that needs to be written to turn on one-touch two-factor authentication inside a web page. Even though we're just doing the enable at this point, this is pretty much everything you need to do. Let's go take a look at what we've done so far. So we're going to stop and start the Node.js code that we showed you a little bit ago. And this is live coding, so it looks like it worked. All right. Let's go ahead and log out. Or no, let's go ahead and press that change now. And here's the dialog box that we built with Authy HTML. And we got a little spinner there saying something's happening. And we've got this approval request here, which I missed. And we can see that this is an update two-factor authentication, register, and we're ready to go ahead and approve this. All right, we got it. It worked. That was the tough part. It gets a little bit easier for the rest of it. Next steps are we need to incorporate some logic into our login process to check to see if the user has enabled 2FA, and if so, make sure that they've actually approved the session before we log on. So let's go ahead and update the existing logon function. We're using the existence of the Authy ID in the user record as our toggle. If they have an Authy ID, two-factor is enabled. If not, two-factor is not enabled. And so we're just running a separate function here called handle two-factor just to try to get all of the Authy code out of the main original code. And you can see that if they don't have two-factor on, we just continue to create the session as we always have. Let's go ahead and create that handle two-factor function. And all we're doing here is checking to make sure the user actually approved the transaction. And if they did, then we're going to go ahead and create the session. Otherwise, they're not going to get logged in. Now, like I said, we wanted to show you every line of code. There's just a little bit of front-side code happening here. On the front end, we're doing two-factor checks. And if two-factor is enabled, we're popping up that dialog with different context at login and at transaction. So we've now actually done all of the code that we need to do to make it work everywhere that we want it to. So let's go ahead and show that. We're going to stop and start the code. We're going to log out. And at login, now we should actually get a two-factor challenge. I should get the approval request. I click on that, there's my Owlbank user login. You can see that the information changed. I press approve, and we're in. Fantastic. This is great. So now if we go to the money transfer, let's send $1 million this time to James Bond. Thanks for all the hard work. We're going to get that approval request. And just to show you that we got everything working, here's that send that money to, hey, I'm not sending James Bond $1 million. Let's deny that. And we're going to see that the receipt there says denied. We've actually shut down the transaction by denying the transaction. So this is great. This is one touch. This is our what we expect you to lead with. But you might need to provide some additional options to your users to accommodate edge cases or devices that aren't capable of running a smartphone application. And so to do that, we're going to first start and add our soft token solution, and we're going to show you that it works offline. And to do that soft token solution, we just need to extend our dialog box to provide slightly different instructions to the user, say either approve the one-touch request or enter your one-time password. And we need to create a field for them to enter that one-time password and a label for that field. And then we need to create a verify button, and that verify button is actually going to make the call to Authy to verify that the token that they entered is correct. So let's go ahead and get that verify button, and then we're going to go back over to the user controller and add the verify token function to our back end to make sure that we have a way to do this. And we're going to slide that in after the user lookup. And again, we're sending the user's Authy ID and the token they just entered, and we're going to get back either a 401 or a 200. And really what we want is that 200, and if there's a 200, we're just going to actually piggyback on top of the one-touch transaction that we already sent. Just didn't make it there because the user's in airplane mode. We're going to set the status to approved, assuming that they entered a valid token. And at this point, let me actually quickly put this guy in airplane mode. We're not going to get that transaction request. And I think we're ready to go, right, Kaveh? All right, let's go test this code. And stop it. Log out, log in. And now we've got a place for the Authy token. No push here. I'm going to open up the application. There's the token. Let's go ahead and type that one in, 0175726. And press verify, cross our fingers. One more thing that we're going to do is we're going to add an SMS button here. Now, SMS is going to give us the lowest common denominator so that the user, no matter what, has a way to get a token, even if they don't have a smartphone. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to just create a button in the authy.html. And we're going to add a send SMS function. And in the send SMS function, or send token function, we're going to send in the Authy ID, and we're going to force it to true to make sure that no matter what, they get an SMS, even if they have a smartphone or they're on file with a smartphone. Let's go ahead and finish that up. Stop and start the code. And we have no SMS button there. Okay, so we've run into a few problems, but we've just shown you in 20 minutes. That was all the coding that was necessary, even though we didn't get the login there. You could code a comprehensive two-factor authentication solution in a day and deliver in less than one sprint. This is backed by our highly scalable 5.9 service used by 2 million users and protecting over 10,000 applications today. Two of our customers, Coinbase and Cloudflare, implemented Authy over 3 years ago. They haven't changed their API since, and yet during that time, we've updated our applications over 50 times, including iOS and Android apps, tablet versions, Chrome application versions, a new watch app. We've improved our fraud detection, our SMS routing, and they didn't have to make a change. If you have any questions, stop by our booth. This is Kaveh Mirju, and I'm Dan Kilmer. Thank you.